What's up everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Now let's get into it. Brendan Schaub talks about Chael Sonnen's situation after the American Gangster's charges are dismissed. On Wednesday, reports out of Nevada stated that all of the felony charges against Chael Sonnen had been dismissed, and now the case will only have the original 5 misdemeanor charges set for Sonnen. The whole thing stems from an alleged altercation back in December at the Las Vegas Four Seasons Hotel. Sonnen was originally charged with 11 counts of battery, having been briefly detained by police but not arrested. Sonnen has never publicly addressed this altercation. The charges were dropped, but later refiled earlier this month to include felony charges, but ultimately the felony charges were dismissed and 5 misdemeanor charges remain. Now, Brendan Schaub, former heavyweight fighter turned MMA pundit and comedian, has talked about this specific situation before back in December. Just days after the altercation made headlines, Schaub was the one who came out and stated that this took place because a couple were allegedly harassing Sonnen's wife, making disparaging remarks, and that he knew there was a brawl, although more details were sketchy. Now, recent details came to light in which Sonnen allegedly choked out a man in the hallway of the resort, and is also accused of having punched the man's wife when she tried to stop the whole thing. While questioning why more footage of the altercation has not come out, this is what Schaub had to say about it.
I don't know what happened there. Knowing Chael, I have a hard time. A guy that has no history of violence outside the octagon that randomly picked this innocent family and punched both of them in the face. I have a very hard time believing that. Very, very difficult time believing that.
Sonnen has a court date set for April 27 in Las Vegas, and it's unclear how this thing will play out or if Sonnen will say anything publicly about this beforehand. But what do you think about Schaub's comments regarding the new details concerning the altercation involving the American Gangster? Masvidal should just take the L after loss to Covington, says Joe Rogan. The highly anticipated UFC 272 headliner turned into more of a mauling, with Colby Covington keeping Jorge Masvidal on the ground for much of the fight and just never letting Gamebred get a chance to one-up him. Colby was a step ahead at seemingly every turn, and while Masvidal got his licks in there in the stand-up from time to time, it wasn't anywhere near enough as Colby got the unanimous decision in pretty dominant fashion. The dust-up took place a few weeks later outside a Miami Beach restaurant, and it will now be the main thing that people remember from this rivalry, as it could land Masvidal in prison if he's found guilty of second-degree felony aggravated assault along with criminal mischief, not to mention a host of possible fines. For longtime UFC color commentator and MMA expert Joe Rogan, Masvidal should have just left it all in the cage. In a recent episode of the JRE podcast, he was speaking with MMA legend Josh Barnett, and both of them got to talking about this whole sordid tale that started as a solid friendship, turned into a heated cage fight, and now has turned into an ugly episode in which legal action is being taken. This is what Rogan said about the whole thing. If you want to fight someone and you lose, I feel like at a certain point in time, you gotta accept what happened. What do you think of Rogan's comments here concerning Masvidal? Aljamain Sterling looking to dominate Petr Yan in Bantamweight title unification fight. This fight has grudge match written all over it. UFC 273 is going to feature a high-stakes Bantamweight title fight between Petr Yan and Aljamain Sterling that will no doubt have fans on their feet. The last time these two met was back in March of 2021, with no fans in attendance, but with a very bizarre ending that saw Yan DQ'd for an illegal knee strike on a downed opponent, and Sterling throwing the title on the ground after it was wrapped around his waist. By the time the two stepped into the octagon together, it would have been 13 months since they last fought, and 13 months since Sterling last competed. Yan, meanwhile, has been able to beat Corey Sandhagen in convincing fashion for the interim Bantamweight title last year, as Sterling took a whole year off to recover from serious neck surgery. Sterling and Yan have been verbally sparring through social media ever since their UFC 259 encounter. In the latest salvo, Sterling talks about how he's going to dominate the Russian. This is what he tweeted in response to a fan. "It's fascinating how terrified humans are to try to excel in life. Your fears are not mine. Your thoughts and opinions also are not mine. I will win and I will dominate. Half you thumb pushers will never relate to confidence in the work you put in. Enjoy the show." At the moment, Yan is the favorite to take back the title on April 9th, favored at -450, while Sterling, the champion, is clearly the underdog here. But do you agree with Sterling that he's going to beat Yan, or do you have your money on the Russian to win this fight? Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all the latest fight news. Gilbert Burns calls out Alexander Gustafsson for overhyping his boy Khamzat. With Gilbert Burns less than 2 weeks away from meeting the much-hyped Khamzat Chimaev inside the octagon at UFC 273 on April 9th, the Brazilian is doing the usual rounds of interviews with basically anyone who will stick a microphone in front of him. And in his latest interview, he's saying that former light heavyweight title challenger Alexander Gustafsson, who has been training with Khamzat for several years, is overselling and overhyping his boy ahead of their UFC 273 clash. Khamzat already has a ton of momentum going into this fight. Hell, the fact that he's even facing off against the #2 welterweight in the world in Burns should already tell you something about the UFC's plans for the Chechen Swede. He's finished every single one of his opponents in his MMA career, all inside of 2 rounds. And in the UFC, he's gone 4-0, demolishing fighters put in front of him, and in 2 weight classes no less. Gustafsson recently suggested that Khamzat could be part of the conversation in the future, with the phrase "greatest of all time" attached to this conversation. Gustafsson has praised Khamzat's work ethic, much of which he has seen up close and personal at their gym in Stockholm. In a recent interview with The Underground, Burns stated that while he does laud Khamzat for his skill set and what he's been able to do so far, earning his respect, talk about putting him in the GOAT conversation is way too premature. This is what Burns had to say about Gustafsson's statements.
So I think Gustafsson is very good. These guys are very good, but they kind of hyping that guy a little bit more. Oh, that guy, we'll see. April 9 is a big test for me.
The Burns-Khamzat fight is rumored to be a title shot eliminator, with the winner potentially earning a crack at the welterweight title later this year. What do you think about Burns' comments here concerning Gustafsson's praise of Khamzat? Kamaru Usman talks about who took the L in Masvidal-Covington altercation. Kamaru Usman knows both Jorge Masvidal and Colby Covington very well. He's beaten both of them twice, once by finish and once by decision. And despite all the hoopla about their physical altercation that took place outside of a Miami Beach restaurant, Usman feels that both fighters come out as losers in this one. In speaking during an Instagram live session recently, Usman spoke about a range of topics, answering fans' questions, not least of which was the infamous situation that took place outside of the steakhouse last week, involving both Masvidal and Colby, that now has police involved. For Usman, he believes that it's all part of the danger of trying to build a fight through trash talk when there's already so much animosity and familiarity between the 2 sides. Don't forget, Colby Covington mentioned Jorge Masvidal's kids and family in the lead up to their fight. Usman says that if he were in that situation, he simply would just let his hands inside the cage do the talking. He also relayed how he believes both guys are in the wrong here. This is what he stated in the Instagram live session.
You can't go as an athlete, as an elite athlete. You're one of the best athletes in the world. You can't just go attacking somebody on the street. Even, yeah, I understand it's another athlete, but you just can't do that when it's outside of competition. So both guys took a big L on that one. Pray for both though. I hope they're okay.
Masvidal now faces 2 charges, including second-degree felony aggravated battery. If he's found guilty, Masvidal could be looking at spending up to 15 years in prison and/or a fine of up to $10,000. It's unclear what happens here, but a court date has been set for later this year. Do you agree with Usman that both men were in the wrong here? Thanks so much for joining us today and catching up on all things MMA. What do you make of what's going on in the fight world? Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all the latest news from the MMA Zone. See you next time.